I stood at the edge of the Sterling's dock, watching my son Marcus try to laugh at his father-in-law's joke about my vintage sneakers. The afternoon sun glinted off the lake behind their sprawling vacation home, and I could feel Victoria's mother, Patricia, studying me from the deck like I was a stain on her imported Italian furniture. I wore what I always wear: a flannel shirt from Costco, jeans with a small hole in the knee, and those sneakers Gerald Sterling had just mocked. They were comfortable. They worked. Why would I need anything else? But here's what the Sterlings didn't know. As they sipped their overpriced wine and exchanged knowing glances about their son-in-law's unfortunate family situation, those shoes had walked across factory floors I owned. I wore it the day I signed the papers selling Morrison Manufacturing for $45 million. And that old Ford pickup truck they'd grimaced at when I pulled up, paid in cash. 15 years ago. Runs like a dream. I'd kept my wealth quiet for 30 years. After my wife Ellen passed, I sold the company, set up trusts for Marcus, and retired to my small house in Millbrook. I liked my life simple. I cut my own grass, fixed my own sink, bought my groceries with coupons Ellen had taught me to clip. Marcus knew I was comfortable, but assumed I was just a retired factory manager living on a pension. I preferred it that way. Then he married Victoria Sterling 6 months ago. The wedding was the first warning sign. Patricia had practically rewritten the guest list, moving my side of the family to the back tables. Space considerations, she'd explained with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Gerald had cornered me at the reception, asking what I used to do with the tone of someone inquiring about a prison sentence. But I'd said nothing. I watched. I waited. The invitation to their lake house came through Victoria. "Dad," Marcus had said over the phone, his voice tight with the stress I'd been hearing more and more lately. "Victoria's parents want to get to know you better. A whole weekend up at their place. They're really insisting." I heard what he wasn't saying. They were insisting because they'd been complaining. About me. About my old truck. About how I'd shown up to Sunday dinner in work boots. About how their daughter had married into a family that shopped at discount stores. "Sure, son," I'd told him. And that's how I ended up here. On this June weekend, being introduced to the Sterlings' friends as Marcus's father, Richard. He's retired. The pause before retired said everything. Patricia Sterling swept onto the dock in white linen that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Richard, we're heading up to the house for lunch. I hope you like lobster? We had it flown in fresh from Maine this morning." She glanced at my shoes again. "Though perhaps you're more of a hamburger man?" I smiled. "Lobster sounds fine, Patricia. Thank you for having me." Her laugh was like wind chimes in a hurricane, sharp and cold. "Of course! Family is family. After all, regardless of circumstances." Marcus caught my eye, his face red. Victoria looked away. The lake house wasn't a house. It was an estate. 7 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, a chef's kitchen that Patricia made sure to mention cost more than most people's annual salary. She'd seated me in what was clearly the least desirable guest room, tucked above the garage, with a view of the driveway, instead of the lake. "We thought you'd be comfortable here," she'd said. "Closer to your truck." Lunch was an exercise in subtle cruelty. Gerald held court at the head of the table, discussing his business ventures with the kind of vague language that told me he was more CEO of inheritance than talent. He'd invited another couple, the Hendersons, clearly to provide an audience. "Real estate development," Gerald was saying, swirling his wine. "You have to understand market timing, leverage, the art of the deal. It's not for everyone. Takes a certain breeding, if you will." "What did you say you did, Richard?" Mrs. Henderson asked with polite interest. "Manufacturing," I said simply. "Made parts for industrial equipment. Factory work," Gerald boomed. "Honest labor. Nothing wrong with that. Built this country. Men like Richard. Though, of course, the world's changed now. Everything's automation. Technology. Sophisticated financial instruments." He leaned back, his belly straining against his polo shirt. I've been teaching Marcus about real investing. Can't just rely on an engineer's salary. Not if he wants to give Victoria the life she deserves. Marcus's jaw tightened. Victoria touched his hand, but there was something in her gesture that bothered me. Not comfort, but compliance. As if she agreed her husband's income wasn't enough. Marcus does well, I said quietly. He's good at what he does. Patricia laughed. Oh, we're not criticizing. We know he works hard. It's just, well, Victoria is accustomed to certain things. Private schools for the future grandchildren, the right zip code, club memberships. We're trying to help them understand what real success looks like. She turned to her daughter. Sweetheart, did you talk to Marcus about that property we saw? The one in Willow Creek? Only $850,000. And Daddy could help with the down payment. Marcus stared at his plate. We're fine, in our condo, Patricia. But you're not, Patricia said, her voice saccharine. You're cramped. You're in that neighborhood. And with Richard's situation, it's not like you can expect family help. The implication hung in the air. I was a burden, not a resource. I took a bite of my lobster. It was good, but I'd had better. There was a place in Portland Ellen and I used to go. Back when we were building the company, celebrating small victories. The owner knew us by name. No one flew anything in. It was just fresh and honest and real. I manage, I said. Gerald laughed. I'm sure you do. Patricia, leave the man alone. Not everyone needs a lake house and a BMW. He winked at me. Some people are happy with simplicity. Right, Richard? Nothing wrong with that. That evening, Gerald organized a poker game with Mr. Henderson and 2 other men from their country club. Quarter stakes, he'd announced. Keep it friendly. But by the time I sat down, I could see it was a test. They wanted to see if I could even play. If I understood the rules of their world. I lost the first 3 hands deliberately, folding early, acting uncertain. Gerald grew bolder. His bets more aggressive. He won a $200 pot and laughed. Beginner's luck runs out. Richard, this game's not for everyone. Thanks for watching. The best licks subscribe may. Thank you for watching. Then, I started to play for real. Not to win big, just enough to shift the dynamic. I read Gerald like a balance sheet. He bluffed when his voice got louder. He had good hands when he went quiet. By midnight, I was up $600. And Gerald's face had gone from jovial to tight-lipped. You're better than you let on, he said, an edge in his voice. Ellen taught me, I said. She was better with numbers than I ever was. Your late wife? Patricia said from the doorway. She was the CFO, I said. Of what? Our company. The room went silent for just a beat. Then Patricia laughed. Oh, a small business. How sweet. Gerald, we should let Richard get some rest. Big day tomorrow. We're taking the boat out. But I saw something flicker in Gerald's eyes. A question he didn't ask. The next morning brought the boat trip. Gerald's yacht, a 42-footer named Sterling Success, cut through the lake water with the kind of precision that came from money, not skill. The captain he'd hired did all the actual work while Gerald stood at the helm, posing. Victoria and Patricia were sunbathing on the deck. Their designer swimsuits and oversized sunglasses, a matched set. Marcus sat near me at the stern, looking miserable. You okay, son? I asked quietly. He glanced toward Victoria, making sure she couldn't hear. Dad, I'm sorry about this weekend. They're a lot. They're fine. They're not fine. They think you're broke. They think I married up, and you're some kind of embarrassment. He rubbed his face. And the worst part? Victoria's starting to believe them. Last week she asked why you don't live in a better house, said her parents were worried about you. Alone in Millbrook. In that old place. The old place. 3 bedrooms. Paid off. With Ellen's garden still blooming every spring because I tended it. The place where I'd raised my son. where Ellen and I had laughed and fought and built a life. Do you think I need a better house? I asked. Marcus looked at me. Really looked at me. No, Dad. You're happy there. That's what matters. But Victoria, she doesn't understand. Her parents have been in her ear about lifestyle, about appearances, about how we should be living. And honestly, I can't afford what they want. My salary's good, but not Gerald Sterling good. She wants the life she grew up with, and I can't give it to her. My heart ached for him. This was exactly what I'd feared. Marcus, does Victoria love you? He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. I thought she did. He said finally. But lately, it feels like she loves the idea of who she thought I'd become. Her parents keep talking about potential and investment opportunities, and how I should be more ambitious. Gerald offered me a job at his firm. Sales. He said engineering is limiting my earning potential. What did you say? I said no. I love what I do. But Victoria got upset. Said I wasn't thinking about our future. About kids. About security. He looked out at the water. I don't know if I made the right choice marrying her, Dad. Before I could answer, Gerald's voice boomed across the boat. Richard, come take a look at this depth finder. Latest technology. $15,000 upgrade. You won't believe the detail. I walked up to the helm. Gerald was in his element, showing off. See? This is what separates the men from the boys. Quality equipment, quality everything. That's how you build real wealth. Real wealth, I repeated. Absolutely. You know, Richard, I've been meaning to ask, what kind of retirement do you have? 401k? Pension? Because if you need advice, I know some people can't have Marcus worrying about his old man. The condescension was thick as fog. I appreciate that, Gerald. Of course. That's what family does. We take care of our own, lift each other up. He clapped me on the shoulder. Tell you what, we'll set up a meeting with my financial advisor. No charge. Family rate. Patricia joined us, overhearing. Gerald, that's so generous. Richard, you're lucky to have us looking out for you now. Marcus can't do it on his salary. Poor dear. That evening, they hosted a dinner party. A dozen of their closest friends. The cream of their social circle. The dress code was smart casual, which apparently meant my polo shirt and khakis were woefully inadequate compared to everyone else's designer labels. Patricia made sure everyone knew who I was. This is Richard, Marcus's father. He's from Millbrook. Worked in manufacturing his whole life. Very blue collar. Very authentic. She said authentic the way someone might say quaint or rustic, with a pat on the head implied. I was seated at the far end of the table, between an elderly woman who seemed kind, but largely deaf, and an empty chair that stayed empty all night. I was the charity case at the feast. The conversation flowed around me. Stock tips, vacation homes in Aspen, which yacht club had the better membership. Someone mentioned a business deal Gerald had just closed. Some kind of development project. Tell them about the investors, Jerry, Patricia prompted. Gerald preened. Well, we had to court some pretty significant players. Anonymous money, old money, the kind that doesn't advertise. They were impressed with our presentation, our vision. We're breaking ground next month. How much did they invest? Someone asked. 20 million, Gerald said, and waited for the impressed murmurs. They came on cue, changed everything for the project. These people, they don't mess around, due diligence like you wouldn't believe. But we passed every test. I took a sip of my water and said nothing, but I remembered. 6 months ago, my investment manager had brought me a proposal, a development project, mixed use, looked promising. The Sterling Development Group was heading it up. I'd agreed to come in as a silent partner. $20 million, on the condition that my name stayed out of it. I liked being silent. It meant people showed you who they really were. The same manager had called me last week with concerns. The project was going over budget. Thanks for watching. Gerald was spending money on amenities that weren't in the original plan. inflating his lifestyle expenses on the company card. The other investors were getting nervous. "We might need to call a meeting," my manager had said. "Pull back or demand more oversight." I'd told him I'd handle it. And now, sitting at the far end of Gerald's table, invisible, except as a punchline, I knew exactly how I'd handle it. Later, as guests mingled with after-dinner drinks, I found Marcus on the deck alone. "How you holding up?" He looked exhausted. "Victoria's inside with her mother, planning our future. They want us to put an offer on that house in Willow Creek. Gerald says he'll loan us the down payment." "What do you want?" Marcus laughed, bitter. "Does it matter? Dad, I love my wife, but I don't recognize her anymore. She used to be happy in our little condo, cooking dinner together, hiking on weekends. Now she's talking about country clubs and private schools and keeping up with her parents' friends. I can't do this." "Then don't. It's not that simple. Her parents have made it clear that if I can't provide, they will. And that comes with strings. Gerald's already told me the job offer expires after this weekend. Says I need to think about what's important." I put my hand on my son's shoulder. "Marcus, let me ask you something. If Victoria had to choose between you and this lifestyle, which would she pick?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. The next morning, Sunday, was supposed to be our departure day. But at breakfast, Gerald made an announcement. "Change of plans. I've invited some business associates for lunch. Important people. Great networking opportunity. Richard, Marcus, you're both welcome to stay," Patricia added. "Though, Richard, you're probably eager to get back to Millbrook? No need to stick around for boring business talk." She was trying to get rid of me. It was so obvious, so clumsy. I smiled. "Actually, I'd love to stay. If that's all right." Gerald waved his hand magnanimously. "Of course. The more the merrier. Just maybe change into something a bit more." He gestured vaguely at my clothes. "This is what I have, Gerald." "Right. Well, you can sit at the side table then, with the other non-business guests." The associates arrived at noon. 3 men in expensive suits, carrying briefcases. I recognized one of them. Tom Brennan, my investment manager. He spotted me, and his eyes widened slightly. But he gave me the tiniest shake of his head. "Not yet." Gerald held court in his study, which he'd opened up to accommodate everyone. There was a main table where he sat with the 3 associates, and then a secondary table near the window where Patricia had placed me, Victoria, and 2 of their neighbors. "Richard," Patricia whispered, "Gerald's about to close another major deal. You're witnessing history. Well, from over here, at least." Gerald began his presentation, talking about expansion plans, ROI projections, future developments. He clicked through slides on a large monitor, showing renderings of buildings, charts of projected profits. "Our current project is ahead of schedule and under budget," he said, which I knew was a lie. "And with our existing investors so pleased, we're ready to expand." Tom Brennan spoke up. "Mr. Sterling, could we actually discuss the current project first? We've had some concerns raised." Gerald's smile flickered. "Concerns? From whom?" "From the primary investor. The anonymous party? They've been silent for months." Tom glanced at me. I nodded, slightly. "Actually," Tom said, "they've been watching very carefully. And they're not anonymous. Not anymore." Gerald laughed nervously. "What are you talking about?" Tom opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "The primary investor in Sterling Development Group, the party that contributed $20 million to get your project off the ground, would like to address some discrepancies in spending and management. This is highly irregular." Gerald sputtered. "We can discuss this privately." "Not in front of family?" Tom said. "I think family should hear this." "The investor agrees." Patricia stood up from our side table. "What's going on?" Tom looked at me again. This was it. I stood up slowly, feeling every eye in the room turn to me. Marcus looked confused. Victoria's face was pale. Gerald's was red. The investor is me, I said quietly. The silence was deafening. Gerald laughed, but it was hollow. That's ridiculous. Richard, this isn't funny. Tom placed the folder on the table in front of Gerald. Richard Morrison, owner and CEO of Morrison Manufacturing for 32 years until sale in 2018. Sale price, $45 million. Primary investor in Sterling Development Group, $20 million. Invested under trust name to maintain privacy. Patricia actually gasped. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. Gerald opened the folder, his hands shaking. He stared at the documents, his face cycling through disbelief, confusion, and then something like horror. You, he stammered. But you drive a Ford. You live in Millbrook. I do, I said. Because I like my life. I don't need a yacht or a lake house to prove anything to anyone. Ellen taught me that. We built our company from nothing, and when we sold it, we decided to live simply. The money's there, in investments, in trusts for Marcus, in opportunities like yours. But I don't wear it like a costume. I walked to the main table, and everyone made space. Tom handed me another folder. Gerald, your project is $3 million over budget. You've been charging personal expenses to the company card. That yacht out there, company asset, according to your books. But I've seen the logs. It's never been used for business. The renovations to this lake house? Also charged to the development account. Gerald's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I'm calling for a full audit, I continued. And I'm requiring you to step down as managing partner. Tom will oversee operations going forward. You'll remain on as a consultant. Limited role. Limited access to funds. You can't do this, Gerald whispered. I can. I own 65% of the project. I've been patient, Gerald. I wanted to see if you'd correct course. Instead, you spent this weekend showing me exactly who you are. You judge people by their shoes and their zip codes. You mock honest work. You think wealth equals worth. I turned to Patricia. You made sure I knew I wasn't good enough for your table. You put me in the room, above, the garage. You introduced me to your friends as a cautionary tale. My voice was calm, but firm. I've met plenty of people like you. All show, no substance. You married money. Gerald inherited it. And you both think that makes you better than people who actually earned it. Victoria started crying. Marcus put his arm around her, but he was staring at me with something like awe. I softened my voice. But here's the thing. I didn't come here to destroy you. I came here to see what kind of people my son married into, and to see if Victoria was with Marcus for the right reasons. Victoria looked up at me, tears streaming. Mr. Morrison, I didn't know that I had money. I know. That was the point. Victoria, Marcus doesn't need his father's wealth. He doesn't need your father's loans. He's a good man with a good job and a good heart. The question is that enough for you, or do you need all this? I gestured around the opulent study. She looked at Marcus, then at her parents, then back at me. I love him, she whispered. I do love him. I got caught up in keeping up. I finished. I understand. Your parents taught you that's what matters, but it doesn't. What matters is who you are when no one's watching, who you are when you think someone can't do anything for you. I looked at Gerald and Patricia. You two failed that test. You were cruel because you thought you could be. You thought I was beneath you. So common decency didn't apply. Patricia found her voice. Richard, we didn't mean. We were just. You meant every word, I said. But here's what's going to happen. The business arrangement stands, as I outlined. The project will continue, but with proper oversight and no more personal charges. Gerald, you'll repay what you've misappropriated. Or, we'll bring in lawyers. Gerald nodded, mute. As for family, I turned to Marcus and Victoria. That's up to you two. Victoria, you need to decide what kind of life you want. If it's country clubs and keeping up with your parents, Marcus isn't your guy. If it's building something real, with someone real, then maybe you've got a chance. Victoria wiped her eyes. I want Marcus. Just Marcus. I'm so sorry. I let them get in my head. I let them make me think we weren't enough. Marcus held her close. We're enough, Vic. We've always been enough. I picked up my old flannel jacket from the back of the chair. Tom will be in touch about next steps, Gerald. I'll be heading home now. As I walked toward the door, Marcus caught up with me. Dad, why didn't you tell me? Because money changes how people see you. I wanted you to make your own way, and you have. You're doing great, son. Don't let anyone tell you different. He hugged me tight. That thing you did in there. That was the most badass thing I've ever seen. I laughed. Your mother would have done it better. She never suffered fools. Victoria approached hesitantly. Mr. Morrison, I hope you can forgive me. I was awful to you. You were young and influenced by your parents. But you get one chance to choose who you're going to be now. Choose wisely. She nodded, determined. I choose Marcus. And I choose to build our own life, not live in my parents' shadow. I drove away from that lake house in my old Ford, watching it shrink in my rearview mirror. Tom called me an hour later. That went well, he said dryly. Did it need to be that dramatic? After the way they treated you, Richard? You showed remarkable restraint. I wanted to flip the table. Richard. I smiled. Ellen would have. I kept it civil, for Marcus's sake. The audit's going to take a few weeks. But we'll straighten it out. Sterling's actually not a bad businessman when he's not playing pretend aristocrat. With proper oversight, the project will succeed. Good. Keep me posted. 3 months later, Marcus and Victoria came for dinner at my house in Millbrook. Victoria had changed. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair in a ponytail. No designer labels, no pretense. They told me Victoria had set boundaries with her parents. Sunday dinners were done. Country club membership canceled. They were staying in their condo and saving for a house they could actually afford. How are Gerald and Patricia taking it? I asked as I served the pot roast. Ellen's recipe made with discount store ingredients that tasted like home. Victoria grimaced. Not well. Mom keeps calling, trying to convince me we're making a mistake. Dad won't speak to me. They think I'm throwing my life away. Are you? She looked around my small kitchen, at the worn countertops and the ancient refrigerator covered in Marcus's childhood drawings I'd never taken down. No, she said firmly. I'm finding it. This is real. That was all just performance. And my unroom. Marcus squeezed her hand. Dad, I wanted to thank you for seeing what I couldn't. For protecting us. That's what fathers do, son. But most fathers would have just told me. You showed me. You let us figure it out. And then you let us figure it out. I thought about that. About the risk I'd taken, playing poor, letting them disrespect me. What if it had backfired? What if Victoria had chosen the lifestyle over Marcus? But she hadn't. And now, they had a chance at something real. After dinner, we sat on my back porch, the one that needed painting but had the best view of Ellen's garden. Victoria helped me clean up, while Marcus started a fire in the pit. Mr. Morrison, Victoria said as she dried dishes. Can I ask you something? Call me Richard. Or Dad, if you want. And, yes, why do you still live like this? I don't mean that in a bad way. You could have anything. Why stay in Millbrook? Why drive that old truck? I looked out at the garden, at the roses Ellen had planted the year before she died. Because everything I loved is here. The memories, the life we built. The money was never the point. The life was. And adding square footage or buying a new car wouldn't improve what I have. She was quiet for a moment. My parents never understood that. They think more is always better. A lot of people do. But I learned something building that business with Ellen. The best things in life, the things that actually matter, they don't scale up. A meal with people you love, a garden that blooms every year, work that means something. Those things are the same whether you're rich or poor. So why not just be comfortable and focus on what matters? Victoria smiled. Thank you for teaching me that. Even if the lesson was kind of brutal. With Ing, sometimes the best lessons are. That night, after they left, I sat in Ellen's chair, the one she always read in, and thought about the last few months, about Gerald's face, when he realized who I was, about Patricia's desperate attempts to backpedal, about the way Marcus had stood taller, more confident, after seeing his father wasn't someone to pity but someone to respect. The money had been a test, but not for me. For them. And my son, my good, kind son, had passed. He'd chosen love and integrity over wealth and status. He'd chosen the life Ellen and I had modeled for him, even when he thought I was broke. That was worth more than the $45 million. Worth more than the satisfaction of watching Gerald Sterling squirm. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Love you, Dad. Thanks for everything. Especially for being you. I texted back. Love you too, son. Proud of you. Room that cough. And I was. Because at the end of the day, that's what mattered. Not the money in the bank, or the size of the house. Not the yacht, or the designer clothes, or the country club. What mattered was raising a son who knew the difference between wealth and worth. And in that, I was the richest man I knew.